On insults. Insults are a part of life, and boy do they sting. I was once asked on a local forum how to handle being insulted and what one should do when their character is called into question. The following is a summary of my response to this individual. A simple and direct, "you're out of line" would suffice, then let it be. To take a more textbook approach, though, we can look at several of the ancient Stoics and their approaches to insults. For instance, Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, "Say to yourself in the early morning, I shall meet inquisitive, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable men. All of these things have come upon them through ignorance of real, good, and ill." Marcus is simply accepting that there are people out there who are just like our acquaintance here, and there is nothing that you can do about it to change it. You then could take a look at Seneca and his strategy of dealing with the insults. Why is it an insult to be told what is self-evident? This assuming that the insulter is knowledgeable and wise. However, like most insults, they come from childish, uninformed adults, and we would be foolish in the same way that a mother would be foolish to let the insults of her child upset her. Epictetus too suggests that we take pause of our insulter. If he is known to be a fool, then we should find our relief over his disapproval, and we should be more concerned if we find the fool to be agreeing with us. My favorite retort to any insult, though, is humor. I feel that laughing it off or laughing in the face of an insult removes the sting of the insult and generally just makes me feel better. The ancient Stoics employed this tactic as well. Seneca would tell a story of Socrates, who one day was hit without warning, to which Socrates made a joke about the nuisance it is that when we go out, that we can never be sure to wear a helmet. And finally, a quote from Epictetus. If you hear that someone is speaking ill of you, instead of trying to defend yourself, you should say, "He obviously does not know me very well, since there are so many other faults he could have mentioned." That was the response that I provided them. I think the biggest thing that the layman gets wrong about Stoicism is the confusion between little s Stoic and big S Stoic. For instance, Google defines Stoic as a person who can endure pain or hardship without showing their feelings or complaining. However, a Stoic, big S again, agrees that feelings, emotions, and pain are all a part of life, accepting that those feelings as things we cannot control is what helps us discover the things in which we can control. In the book, A Guide to the Good Life by William Irving, Irving suggests there are three categories in this: things we can control, things we cannot control, and things that we have some but not full control over. Irving goes on to explain that in order to lead a happy life, one shouldn't concern themselves with what they cannot control, and instead express concern over those in which we can control. For example, someone pays me an insult. I cannot control what this person says, or how he feels, or his opinion of me. That I know I have no control over. However, in the same scenario, I know that I have control over my response to his insult, and I have some control over my emotions. Granted, emotions and feelings are a tough beast to control, but if one understands that emotions are a natural part of being, one can keep from making rash and brash decisions. In summary, insults are a part of life. One would be hard-pressed to find a soul on this earth that hasn't felt the sting of an insult, but gathering our thoughts, considering the insulter, and moving on from the moment will remove the sting and stress of being insulted. In closing, keep these things in mind, dear reader. Sing like no one is listening, dance like no one is watching, and love life like there's no tomorrow. Be well. So I wrote that in the course of a week, specifically for this episode. Basically about insults. Where we work, there's a lot of bureaucracy and layers of people insulting other people or calling other people's work ethic, or
Like most workplaces.
like all workplaces.
Yeah.
Every place I've worked is that way. So I'm sure there's people who are watching or listening that can absolutely agree with that. And so I wrote that in a response to a response of a response about handling insults.
Well, it's like meta.
I know.
Meta.
So I am Bruce, this is George, and today we have Rachel on as our special guest. I am drinking a Shock Top Belgian White. It's their seasonal Belgian White.
Seasonal.
Right, so they made it specifically for 2017. Next year the recipe is going to be different.
Oh, nice.
So it'll be different. And what are you drinking, George?
Actually, I'm also drinking a seasonal, appropriately. It's Sierra Nevada Seasonal 2017 Beer Camp. It's a golden IPA, and it's It's very good.
Yeah.
It's a good hot weather IPA, which is not typically, IPAs aren't typically a hot weather type drink, but this one,
Right.
this one does a good job of it. And again, the recipe is going to be different next year,
Yeah.
so getting it while I can.
I
Absolutely.
had some of that at the beach yesterday.
Did you like it?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
And what are you drinking, Rachel? I see you got a cup there with some clear stuff in it.
Yeah, actually, I've got Bombay Sapphire, the gin.
The gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic, just a basic, because
Yeah.
that's what I like.
All
Gin
right.
and tonic and a little bit of lemon juice.
A
All
nice
right.
mixed
Makes
drink.
it all better.
Yeah.
Yeah. As always, we're not sponsored by any of these people.
Nope.
Yeah, see the subtitles.
Right.
So you wrote that over the course of a week,
Mm-hmm.
and Stoicism is something that you and I have already talked a lot
Yeah,
about, just
yeah.
not on the podcast, but in general.
Right. So I consider myself a Stoic. I absolutely follow Marcus Aurelius, Seneca the Younger, Epictetus, and all.
When you
those
say
great-
follow, you don't mean like follow on Twitter, because
they're dead.
they're dead.
They're dead. Yeah. So Stoicism. The word Stoicism comes from stoa, which is Greek for like a porch, and it basically there's a bunch of these old dudes sitting around thinking and talking about life.
That's awesome. Or sitting around a table.
Right? See the connection now? And so it came down to Stoic. But it was all like, how can you lead the happiest life you can, right? And they're like, well, maybe if we removed all emotion. Well, we can't remove emotion because you experience emotion.
Right.
I experience emotion, you experience emotion, right? But the way that we react to those emotions and the things we choose to do, and I think I've said it before on this podcast, but like, I don't make a threat when I'm angry, and I don't make a promise when I'm happy.
Right, yeah.
Which is, it's a boiled down version of it, right?
It's a good philosophy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so, if you're struggling in life, I absolutely suggest to look into Stoicism. Bill Irving's, this is a shameless plug to his book. It's one of my favorite ones.
Not sponsored by Bill Irving.
Or his book, A Guide to the Good Life. It's A Guide to the Good Life. It's a good primer on what Stoicism is, and he also goes into like Zen Buddhism, and they have a lot of,
Overlap.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, I had forgotten that, about the porch thing, you know, because I feel like so many people try to solve the world's problems just over drinks on a porch, you
Yeah.
know, and a lot of times that's all it takes.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's low pressure, you know, and not that we're trying to solve any world problems or anything, but
No,
one of
we're
the
just
things
talking
that I
about
was
them.
glad you, yeah, one of the things I was glad you pointed out was talking about emotions. So emotions are that facet of humanity that we can't really control. We can't
Right.
control the feelings a lot of times that happen.
Yeah, they're a natural response. You know,
Right.
somebody cuts me off in traffic, my first initial response is anger. Like, I'm going to get angry.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
if I have a good control or a good grasp of my emotions, it'll just be a flash in the pan. I'll be done and over with it, and I'll carry on, and I'll have a better day.
If you understand about yourself that
Yeah.
you get angry in traffic, or you know when a loved one dies, you're gonna feel sad about
yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And you can acknowledge those emotions just fine. You know, you can't handle that, but you made a good point. You can control what you do about those emotions.
Absolutely.
And the difference, I think, that's really important to point out is that a lot of people will argue that emotions seem pointless. Like they suggested, like, let's just get rid of emotions. There's a
Right.
movie about that, like Equilibrium, where they like
Oh, yeah,
remove
they-
all
they take
emotions
the
from
pill or
society.
something.
Yeah, something like that. But really, that's what ties us to like being human.
Right.
To-
It's absolutely what makes us human.
it's a part of our humanity, you know, and the fact that we have a choice in whether or not we do something about one emotion or another is like, that's huge, you know. It's freedom.
Yes, absolutely.
So you talked about Marcus Aurelius, and I am aware, but no one else is aware, that you're a big fan.
Oh, huge fan. He's the guy that I follow. So Marcus Aurelius, he wrote this book, and it's called Meditations, and it's his diary essentially, and it's basically an open letter to himself to remind himself how to lead that good life, right? And he was the emperor of Rome. I think that's the right term, emperor. Fact check me.
Yeah,
We're gonna go with emperor.
Yeah.
Leader of Rome.
Send us an email.
Yeah, please. For a long time, And he would do things like, instead of raising taxes when Rome needed money, he would sell off his own personal possessions. Because his feelings and thoughts on that is like, why am I going to punish the person below me for something that I've done wrong?
Yeah.
Right. He took his wife on campaign with him because he couldn't trust her to not sleep around, but he didn't divorce her because the right thing to do is to be a man about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, one of his best quotes is like, stop discussing what it is to be a man and just be one.
Yeah.
You know,
Stop talking about it.
discussing what it is to be a good man and just do it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, it's like if someone were to sit around a table and talk about something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Over alcohol.
Yeah. Some might say it's an exercise of futility.
That is something you see in life. You know, you run into these people and they're like, well, this is what should happen and that was what should happen, but they don't walk the walk, or they don't walk their walk that they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I've been guilty of that before.
Everybody has.
Yeah.
They're not
It's a
going to
human
change
thing.
it for next time either, though, too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But even I joke about us sitting around a table and how it's, you know, it's kind of like doing that thing. But really, even Marcus Aurelius, like he needed to get his thoughts outside of himself in order to remind himself.
And that's a concept we've
to
talked
recognize.
about before. If you write something down and you put it out there, it now you've lent it credence. It exists in the world.
Yeah,
you know,
you
it's
acknowledge
exactly why I
those
write.
feelings.
You know,
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go as far as say that my writing is anything like meditations, because in no way am I
Pretty soothing.
as well, yeah, as stoic as Marcus was, but
Someday people are going to look back on your blog posts and
it's
be
like, wow,
"Man,
this guy.
this guy would sell off his possessions to save his village if he
Yeah.
ever had a village or was trusted with any authority."
Probably not. But see, I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
That's that self-awareness.
Yeah. So one of my favorite bits in that thing that you wrote is the humor, and it was Epictetus talking
Yeah.
about how, I mean, this guy thinks he's insulting me. He doesn't even know.
Right. You know, and that's actually one of my favorite responses to being insulted. I have this friend, and they were recently insulted, just generically insulted. And they're like, well, how could they say something like this? And we're like, they don't know you. They clearly don't know you. I know you, and everybody that we know knows you. So why are you even concerned about what they say? Because if that's the worst thing that they can say about you, they clearly don't know you.
Yeah.
I don't make very many friends.
Yeah. You got at least one.
Maybe 1.5. We'll try.
So
Thank you, Rachel.
But I love that because, do you ever watch MASH?
Yes.
Yeah, back in the day, one of my favorite. I've seen the whole thing start to finish at some point, but there's still chunks of it that I can't really remember. But the one episode that sticks out to me the most is, what's his name? The main dude. It's been so
Radar?
Alan Alda, Hawkeye.
Hawkeye.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So
I've never
they're
seen
getting audited or whatever the equivalent term is for surgery, and this, snooty suit guy comes around and he's inspecting all their stuff and telling them how out of code they are and how they don't take themselves seriously, and they're always joking around and laughing and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the end of the episode rolls around, and he goes into the room whenever they get this like mass amount of casualties in there, and they go in and a bunch of people die. I don't know. It's just really hard, and this inspector dude loses his ish, and he and Alan Alda are sitting in a room afterwards.
Yeah.
After they've kind of got through it, and this guy asks Alan Alda, how do you do it? Why is it that you can go through this hell and still be able to laugh? And I'm not quoting this, by the way. It's been a long time. But Alan Alda comes back and he says, essentially, if I didn't laugh, I would cry.
Yeah.
And there's been times in my life, and I'm sure everyone's life, where it's like that.
Yeah.
You're either going to laugh about how ridiculously bad a situation is, or you're going to cry about it. And sometimes crying is the right call, but sometimes you just need to step back and laugh at yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-deprecating humor is one of my favorite defense mechanisms, because if I make fun of myself, then you don't have any ammunition to hit
Yeah.
me with.
What are you gonna do?
What are
now?
you gonna do?
You're right. I am a dumbhead.
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah. And that's along the same lines. If you're not, if you can't laugh about it, you're gonna cry.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we go through in life.
But there's a difference between that as a defense mechanism and repression.
Right.
Right.
I don't clearly think that I'm a dumbhead, but if I say it out loud, then you're like, well,
Then I'm taking that power away.
all right.
From you.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like I'd rather have the control and the power in my court than let you have the control and the power to control me. Because the moment I give you anger, the moment I'm mad at you, the moment I give you any kind of emotion, you now have control over me.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I
Right.
don't like having people have control over me.
Yeah.
That's the whole...
I mean, it's hard enough to control yourself half the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or my emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that about Stoicism because it's not unrealistically claiming that you always have to
Right.
have these happy feelings,
Right.
right? Feelings happen. We can't do a whole lot about that. But what you can do is recognize that you can't do a whole lot about that,
Yeah.
and then just move on.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that is the unlayman definition and kind of like primer of it. I mean, there's a whole bunch to it, like,
Yeah,
what
I'm
your
sure.
logo says and all this other stuff. But what I would impart with somebody who's never experienced Stoicism or has touched it or experienced it, studied it, is
They haven't
is
been
that.
enlightened.
Well, not enlightened. I'm not looking for nirvana. I'm just
Right.
looking to make it.
Yeah, looking for tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. It's exactly that. Just understand what you can and can't control, and carry on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So many times it's been like that in life for us recently, and we've talked, I think, in past episodes. If not, here you go. Happiness is a choice.
Absolutely.
You can't always choose your life circumstances. You can't always, if you put together a 5-year plan, it'll probably fall apart after a year.
Or 6 months.
Or 6 months, but what you can do, no matter what your plan is or what your circumstances are or how you're feeling, is you can choose to be happy.
Yeah.
You can choose to be like, well, this is happening. This is fine.
This is fine.
This is fine.
Optimism all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so optimism. We've got just over 2 minutes left, but I wanted to real quick, would you say that Marcus Aurelius, he has that quote about, just assume that everybody's the worst, basically.
Yeah.
Would you say that makes him a pessimist?
A lot of people
Curveball,
kind of ask that
sorry.
about Stoicism is like, are you naturally a pessimist? Personally, I'm not. I actually, my biggest flaw is I give people the benefit of the doubt that they're decent human beings. Well, Marcus, and I think Marcus had that problem too, and that's why he wrote it down, because he may have gotten burned by giving somebody the benefit of the doubt one too many times, and he's like, you know what? People are just POSs. you
Yeah.
know? And I don't think he goes out in life thinking that. You need to understand that that person does not have the same experiences that you do, right? So they're going to react and act differently than you are in any given situation.
Yeah.
So
not a pessimist.
not a pessimist, but I wouldn't say he's a flaming optimist
Sure,
either.
optimist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's trying to find and strike that balance between pessimism and optimism, and just understanding that the people you come into interaction with throughout the day are going to have different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually we're going to talk about, in the next segment, we're going to talk about different perspectives and people's different viewpoints on the same kind of situation.
Right.
So with that, I think we're going to take a smoke break.
Yep, and when we come back, George will actually play a song for us, and Rachel is going to sing in with her.
Ooh la la. Be right back.
So we're back. Great smoke break. George has a song for us, and he's got Rachel singing harmony.
Honey, 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 You're my honey bear. Honey, honey, honey. You don't even care. I see you in the morning with your glassy stare. You're looking right through me as if I'm not even there. Do-do-da, do-do-da, do-do-da-da. Do-do-da, do-do-da, do-do-da-da. Honey, 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 my lolly girl. No, I've got no money, but I wish I was your world. I wish that I could woo you. Wish you knew my name. Your hot mess, ripped dress, hairdo is driving me insane. Do-do-da, do-do-da, do-do-da-da. Do-do-da, do-do-da, do-do-da-da. Honey, 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 know that you don't care. But honey, when you need me, know that I will always be there. Be there.
That was great. So, name of the song is Honey.
Honey.
And what's the etymology of that? Where does it come from? Because we've talked about it before, and I know that the context of the song and what the song is saying is not the same as where the inspiration came from.
Yeah, when you listen to the song at face value, it's a song about non-reciprocal, unrequited love, which is a sentiment that most people can relate to who went through high school. Yeah.
Young teenagers.
Yeah. But the story is actually not what you would think. We have a niece who, at this time in her life, was really into Winnie the Pooh, and so she would watch Winnie the Pooh 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what song it is that is in there, but it's Winnie the Pooh singing about honey.
Honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was 1, maybe 2 years old, and her limited vocabulary and tonal coordination, she would kind of walk around the house just going, honey, 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 And so I took that and kind of ran with it and just kind of started playing around with it. And the more I played around with it, the more it kind of made sense to frame it in this almost comical, just throwing yourself out there for somebody. And so it really wasn't me going through that situation at the time that I wrote the song. It just, I'd been in that position enough in the past that it was easy enough to be like, oh yeah, if I was a guy that was going through this, these are the thoughts that would be going through my head.
Right. And that's a common emotion that everybody goes through.
Which one?
The unrequited, unreciprocated love.
Yeah.
When you're pining after that one person, you're just like, you don't exist.
Yeah.
Like please love me. No.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and it's a common theme. I mean, it's not an original idea.
No.
Yeah, to talk about that kind of a thing in a song, but yeah, I was was so impressed with how quickly. So for those that don't know, Rachel and I just worked on that a little bit,
Like
before
15
filming.
minutes before filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, before filming the episode, and she picked it up really quick.
She
and
nailed
it just,
it, yeah.
and it just really came off.
So I want to talk about the lyric, and this goes into the comedy thing. Hot mess, ripped dreams, ripped dress
Dress.
hairdo, like, and then on top of that, the oodalali girl, like that kind of sinks it in, like, oh yeah, this is like a comical look of this whole thing. And I want to say that, like, oodalali girl is absolutely my favorite line in that entire song, because I'm a huge fan of
Robin Hood.
Of Robin Hood.
Yeah,
Disney's Robin Hood.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I gotta tell you, people who have been around me in person over the last, I don't know, 29 years of my life, know that I have perpetually had that that whistling ditty, which I don't know if I'm allowed to actually whistle.
I think it's a. I know which one you're talking about. It was the one written by. I just lost his name, but it's right at the beginning, with the. What is he at?
He's like a rooster. He's
a
got
rooster,
a
yeah.
rooster. He's got a little
banjo or something,
guitar
or-
thing.
or
Yeah,
a
and
lute?
he's whistling. I don't know
Yeah.
how you whistle with a beak.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's been perpetually stuck in my head. And oodalali is one of those lines from the movie that stuck with me as well.
Oodalali.
Yeah.
That absolutely is true. So George and I work in the same office, and yes, I hear it. I hear that whistling ditty all the time. It doesn't drive me up the wall or anything, but I do hear it.
It's catchy.
And then at the ending of the song, you say you will always be there, even though she's not watching.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't know you're there, but you know what? I'll be here. When you're ready for me, I'm here.
Yeah. And it can be, it's been taken several, I've shown that song to several different people, and it's been taken like a couple of different ways every time I get to that line in the song.
Well, if your song was in any other like mood with your face, it would be a very stalkerish song.
Yeah,
Like-
right? Yeah, so
the way
I
it
mean,
comes off, like I'm
yeah.
watching you in the morning.
yeah, and when, I mean, honestly, there's probably a lot of like situations in life where it kind of borders on like stalking, where you're just like,
mean,
I can't
love,
stop thinking about this
stalkerish,
person.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
the
there's
same
like there is a line there.
Oh, it's a pretty upbeat. It's an upbeat tempo though, and it's a cute song.
Yeah, and it wasn't meant to be stalkery at all. It was just
Right.
like, it was meant more along those lines where, it's just like, well, maybe you don't want to pay attention to me,
Right.
but if you ever do, I will still exist,
I will
even if
still
you
be
don't
here.
acknowledge that right now.
Right.
I'm still around.
So the unrequited, unreciprocated love, that's an emotion that's really intense too. Like,
Can be, yeah.
You do everything, and you do everything to try to make this person like you, right? Or at least acknowledge your existence.
Yeah, to
Because
the
even-
point of losing yourself sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you end up losing yourself, and you change who you are, and all these other things. And to tie it back to what we were talking about before, you need to understand those emotions, and you need to understand like who you are as a human being, and what your values are.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna start breaking down your own values, then you're not worth much of anything to anybody.
Yeah.
So if you change who you are so that they will like you, they're not liking you. They're liking who you change.
They're
yourself
liking
to
a
be.
facade.
A facade, yeah. And so eventually you're gonna revert back to who you were before, right? It's just natural. It's what we
Right.
all do. We're gonna fall into our old rut and our old ways, and we're gonna be who we inevitably are.
Yeah.
And-
If you don't revert, you're going to go 80 years without knowing who you are.
Right. And
Yeah.
does anybody want to do that?
I mean, no, not
I know
really.
I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, in terms of losing yourself and Stoicism, sometimes you need that third perspective to give you a sense of reality.
Right.
Right. So in this context in the song, I like this person. I love this person. I would pull down the moon and the stars for this person. But
Thank you for that.
but they don't like me back.
Right.
Something must be wrong with me, right? That's the
Right.
wrong idea to have. Sometimes it takes someone saying, dude, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
But like, if you have to be somebody else to make them like you, then you're not going to be happy. And then
Yep.
in the end, they're not going to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Lost for words. That's
Yeah,
all.
no,
You just used a phrase that I've used before, and it threw me off.
Yeah, well, just that whole Stoicism thing.
Yeah.
Right. The third perspective. Sometimes that's yourself.
Sometimes.
Right.
But you've said it before, where like, I think we had met somebody, and you were like, that person just recently went through a change because somebody close to him said he needed to.
Yeah.
And that could be the third perspective. Somebody close. Like, I might be blinded, have my blinders on, going down this trail or whatever. And that third perspective is somebody smacking me in the face and be like, listen, this is not who you are. This is not what you do. You know who you are. Get to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it's yourself being like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's somebody else.
Yeah, I noticed that you became a serial killer like shortly after you started dating this person, and it just seems a little out of character for you. And I'm not trying to impose or get in your business. I just thought I'd point it out.
And maybe you should stop serial killing.
Yeah. Also, the dead bodies. They're starting to stink a little bit in the second bedroom. So sometimes it is someone that has a different perspective
Right.
that can tell you what it is. But sometimes, like Marcus Aurelius,
Mm-hmm.
would write stuff down, basically talking to himself, saying, "Hey, you remember that dumb thing you did?
Yeah.
Here's your thoughts on that thing that you did."
Right.
Yeah. And then he can read them later and be like, "Oh yeah,
I did do that dumb thing.
Yeah.
Why did I do that?
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that was what I had to think about.
And that's a good point about like introspection. It's always good to like self-reflect, and I'm always at odds with 19-year-old me, and that was 11 years ago.
Yeah, me and 19-year-old
I
me would
want to find him and punch him in the face every time.
He
Every
probably
time.
still wouldn't listen.
No.
19-year-old me and I are pretty close. So
That will change.
we're like
Yeah.
we're
That will
like
change.
this right now.
Younger me, like past me, had so many off base like views of the world and all these ideals and stuff, and then life happens.
Yeah.
And like reality sets in, and you're like, oh, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did.
I know. I mean, it's like yourself lending yourself a fresh perspective.
But that self introspection and that self reflection is a very important process into growing as an adult. Just like understanding where you come from, like your parents and how they raised you, and then like your adult formative years. So like that 18 to 25 range, I guess, where you kind of learn how to be an adult, and then it's about 25, 26 is when it hits, and you're like, oh, okay, I know how to pay my bills, I know how to write a check, I know how to,
Hey, I know how to pay my bills, okay?
She's salty because she's younger than 25. I know how to write a check. I haven't bounced a check in, a few years, a few months. I still bounce checks.
Yesterday. Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that's a very important process and aspect of growing and maturing as an adult, which lends into the Stoicism of knowing yourself.
Yeah, and another layer that I was thinking about in terms of all of that is we've talked about being social creatures before and having that need for human interaction.
Yeah.
And that human interaction oftentimes is the thing that kind of like acts as a stepping stone like through our life between 19-year-old you and 30-year-old you. Like there have been these events and people that you went through to get to where you are now. Good, bad, indifferent, you get to hear, right, by that path.
Right.
So
Yeah. You're a sum of all the actions you've taken and all the decisions you've taken before.
Right.
There are things in my past that I'm not very proud of, but they are things that I've done or things that have happened to me that have made me who I am today.
And you learn from.
And ideally you learn from.
Well, yeah, you don't always. Yeah. Sometimes it takes. I always like to say that, and I'm sure that my mom hated hearing me say this, but she knows it's true, that I live my life by Braille a lot of times, or I did for a long time, where I had to feel it out. Like someone could tell me, hey, that's not a good thing to do, or that's not a good path to go down, or that's not a good choice to make. And I'd be like, well, fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway, because
Exactly.
even if you're right,
Yeah.
I need to know that you're right and not just take your word for it.
Yeah, I kind of believe that too. So I have a younger brother, and he's very much the live by Braille. Less so than I am, but and I just want to be like, hey man, like I've been down that road. Let me just tell you, so you don't have to experience it. But he has to experience it, right?
Yeah, he does.
You need to feel that out. You need to know how that hurts, and you need to know how that happiness is happy.
Yeah.
And you need to experience it yourself.
And honestly, I think everyone does.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone does kind of experience it themselves, and they just make the right decisions right off the bat.
Right.
But everyone is going to come to a point in their life where they make a decision that they regret making, or is regrettable, whether or not they regret it.
Yeah.
And it will be a learning experience.
Yeah.
For them.
And I think there are like, there's these milestones everyone has to go through. You have to go through a really bad heartbreak, like really bad, like a really bad, messy breakup. Has to happen. It's gonna suck. And now you know how that feels, so you won't do it again, right? And somebody has to have like,
You'll probably do it again.
I know I will.
You would do it again.
The royal you, not you specifically.
Oh.
So you have to go through a bad breakup, and you have to have somebody who is way more mature than you in a relationship, and then somebody who is way more immature than you in a relationship. And after you've gone through at least those 3 milestones, you'll find that somebody who's like, oh, perfect porridge right here. That was a Goldilocks reference, by the way.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, baby bear. So, but it doesn't always have to be contingent on another person.
No. And that was just an example for relationships. I mean,
right.
Real
Real quick, I think we're at the 2-minute mark or near it.
Okay. So, I have no final thoughts on that. When we come back, we're going to talk to Rachel.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Rachel. And real quick before we wrap up, I just wanted to, it doesn't have to be contingent on another person.
Right.
Like when we're talking about Stoicism and the Stoics and Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and those guys, they did learn a lot from the people around them. I'm sure that Marcus got insulted, which prompted him to write about being insulted. Yeah. So sometimes it's yourself, and that's what you need, and sometimes it's not.
It's your environment or that in which you exist in.
Yeah, but you just got to be able to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
All right, and on that note, I'm sorry.
We're gonna take a break.
We're gonna take a break.
All right. So we're back. This is the Minimal Effort. I'm Bruce. This is George, and we have Rachel here with us today. Third segment, as always, we turn it to our special guest, Rachel.
So that was amazing earlier, singing with you. That little harmony was just harmony. That little harmony was just a little bit of something that the song needed to make it a good little acoustic cover. Where did you learn to sing?
Well, actually, I'm a classically trained opera singer. When I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to do it, and so I went to one of the college professors, and I was the only high school student that she accepted into her classes that year. And so I got kind of on that board, and then I decided to go to college, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And I ended up going for saxophone performance, and every day I wish I would have gone for vocal performance, but
Really? Mm-hmm. Why didn't you?
Scholarships. I liked my saxophone professor a lot better than I liked my vocal teacher. I mean, I loved her. Let's say,
Called
let's be
out.
real here. I loved her, but my saxophone professor is he's like my psychologist, my therapist, my best friend. So.
Oh yeah, and he teaches you saxophone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I'm definitely going to show him this podcast.
Oh, great. Oh, man.
Excellent. Do you still play the saxophone at all?
I do.
Did you bring...
do.
I
didn't
you
bring
have
mine,
it?
but we have one to to hear right now. I have
Yeah.
one, though.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, cool.
We have access to one.
Yeah,
All right.
maybe
Yeah.
So
sometime
maybe,
we'll
yeah.
exploit that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, that's
Probably
great.
throw a
So,
little saxophone at you.
So in high school, what made you decide to do opera singing?
I don't know. I guess I've been singing since I was like 4. My mom's a pastor, so I've been singing in church forever. And it just kind of went from like all of that to singing hymns to singing like musical theater. And then I realized that, honestly, like my voice is better suited for opera. And so I just tried out this teacher, and she wanted to have me. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So 4 is a really specific age to remember beginning to sing. What was it? What's the story behind that?
So honestly, the reason that I remember 4 was because my mom is very into gifts, and she's into the whole you don't have to necessarily like pray to God to be giving him her gifts. And so she looked at me, and I know because I was really little at the time, and she said, your gift to God is going to be singing. And I was like I'm not, Mom, I don't do that, And, whatever.
I've got it all figured out.
but I took that, and that was like it molded my musical career.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff did you do like from the age of 4 up until graduating high school?
Musical theater, different solos, things in choir. I sing the national anthem for everything under the sun.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Just kind of as much as I can.
What productions were you in?
Okay, so my first one was Marion the Librarian in
The Music Man?
Help me. Yeah, The Music Man. That was like my very first debut of actually doing anything.
What was your role in that?
I was Marion.
Oh, you were Marion the librarian.
I was the librarian.
Oh man.
That was my 8th grade musical, and like that was what.
Oh, I thought you
wanna
meant
do
the
this.
song specific, but the whole production you were
No,
Marion
I was
the librarian.
Marion,
Oh man,
yeah.
I love The Music Man.
And I
I'm
don't know.
lost
I've been
on
in.
Oh sorry.
That's okay. I've been in Shrek the Musical. I did the Dragon. That was pretty fun.
Oh nice.
My first alto role, because I'm a soprano 1, so
Oh, okay.
I got to like do all the kind of like growly, like
Nice.
diva-ish alto music, which I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, you had some good lower tones going tonight.
I'm figuring it out. I've been years of practicing the
Yeah.
low stuff.
Experimenting with the highs.
So
and
is
the lows.
Yes.
vocal production, is that something you want to pursue later in life?
Not really.
It's just like a
something you
hobby
enjoy.
thing.
Yeah, I've done a few things. I mean, people always tell me like, "Oh, freaking audition for things." And I'm like, it's not really my style. Like that's not what I do. I sing for fun.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily sing to be heard.
That's
It's an interesting thing to say.
yeah. But I get it. You
Yeah.
know, like people don't sing in the shower to be heard.
Right, and I
Yeah.
don't draw and paint to be seen. I just do it because it makes me happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that.
Singing to make me happy.
As a form of expression.
And I like to sing like around my friends to make them happy. Like,
Yeah.
If they're feeling down, that's how I get them to not feel down anymore.
So sometimes you sing to be heard.
That-
But that's a worthy
yeah.
cause.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good. So, so you went all the way through high school. You were in productions. What was your favorite of the productions you were in?
Honestly, probably the very first one, and that was just because it was new, the Marion role. Like that was the biggest role I got to actually like form myself, kind of, and I'd never done that before. But another favorite is Les Mis.
Oh,
Les Miserables. Oh.
oof.
See, now I understand.
And that one I auditioned in high school, and all of the people I got in, but all the people who were in it were college and above.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know that I was the only high schooler until like we all got there, and apparently they weren't trying to get high schoolers because they were like, we want like a more mature
Yeah, they're very
setting,
cliquey and
right? And so I kind of snuck in there, I guess, and
Yeah.
it was awesome because even though I was a small role, I got to see and be around all of these amazing singers, and I got to really learn from them, and that's what it's all about. Like,
Yeah, every step of growth that I ever took musically was hanging around somebody that was better at what they did than I am.
Yep.
You know, and I loved like the theater environment growing up. Most of the time I was just in the orchestra pit because they didn't trust me on stage.
Yes.
But you still learn so much, like just from being around and seeing everything that goes into a production. You know, most people come into a theater and they sit down, they watch it happen, and they're just like, "Hey, that was great," or they'll write a scathing review or something like that.
Scathing review.
And
Yeah.
you're like, you don't know what I did to be here.
Yeah, you don't understand like all the different
took me
moving
forever.
pieces that have to be working together.
I have a whole soapbox on art critics, but that's for a different time.
Yeah,
Oh,
we can.
man.
That's something to
Yeah,
talk
it's
about.
something to talk about.
Yeah. So I got one of my favorite productions growing up was "It's a Wonderful Life"
Okay.
as a musical,
Right.
which sounds weird right off the bat. And the first time I heard it, I was just like, that sounds like just someone trying to make money or something, you know. But so I got asked to help with this as the assistant conductor, and we were like poring over the music and stuff, like figuring out all the different parts within the orchestra. And I, like, the more I heard it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
it's so different than the movie, even though it's the same story, that you can appreciate them separately.
Right.
And when you watch the musical, you cry for different reasons because they highlight certain things that happen in the movie that just kind of happen like in a second, you know.
Right.
But because it's a musical, they'll take that 1 second, they'll turn it into like a whole song and dance. And the guy that wrote the music is Joe Raposo, who wrote music for the Muppet movies.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I helped with this production, and I watched it, you know, from start to finish, and it was just great. And I got to play a bunch of different instruments where they didn't actually have a musician down there. They were just like, well, we didn't actually get a timpani player because we ran out of money or something. So
Excuse me, a what?
you play the timpani,
Timpani?
you know, the timpani.
Timpani,
Bum,
like
bum,
all the different
bum,
instruments
bum,
around.
bum, bum. Anyway.
Clearly not a music guy.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll verse you.
So I played the timpani for one song, and there was this one beautiful one called "When You Own Your Own Home," and it's about just owning your own home. And it's the Martinellis, I think, just bought their house because of George Bailey, and it's this like beautiful little Italian sonnet. It starts off as a sonnet with like just a mandolin in the background, like playing these little chords and stuff, and it's just fantastic. So that was my favorite experience because I feel like I got to stretch out a little more, like on top of having to help go through the scores and figure everything out. I also got to kind of jump around and learn some new instruments,
Yeah.
you know, and then it was just a great production overall that just
Right.
made me feel good every time I watched it. So
So, I think it was 4 or 5 months ago, we watched La La Land.
oh man,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying the exact same thing about La La Land that you're talking about with It's a Wonderful Life.
which is
That it's amazing.
yeah, it is. It is. And La La Land, all of that could be because. So, did you watch musicals growing up?
A little bit.
Did
A
you
little
see
bit.
La La Land?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I
you need
know
to
when you
change
guys are
that.
talking about
Yeah.
that, I haven't heard
and,
of
You
that.
need to
So.
change that.
Okay, I'll have to look
Yeah,
at
and
it.
we're not a movie review podcast
At all. However, but so
It just kind of fits.
George
so.
and I, we appreciated it for two different reasons. I viewed it from a very like static artist point of view. So I was more concerned with like color theory
Yeah,
and
the mise en
composition
scène of the movie.
yeah, the composition of all the shots and all that stuff. While George, he was listening to the actual music and the scores and all that stuff, and the movement of throughout the movie, and so we appreciated it equally, just on two different realms. And I remember talking about this is going to be a topic later, but
For
but
today's
when you
episode.
so when you were talking about It's a Wonderful Life, that's what I thought about was when we went and saw La La Land.
Yeah. Well, It's a Wonderful Life was just unexpected, and so was La La Land. And so one of the things is, I mean, the reason I ask about musicals is because my favorite movie for still the majority of my life at this point until I get older, and then the statistics get skewed. It was Singing in the Rain.
Oh, okay.
Donald O'Connor
Yeah.
and Gene Kelly. I intentionally say Donald O'Connor first because he's my hero, even though Gene Kelly was the star.
That's okay. My hero is Christian Chenoweth, so.
Okay, yeah. See, fair enough. And if you haven't seen it, you oughta.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite musical?
Honestly, not really.
No?
I like everything.
You like
Absolutely
everything?
everything.
What was the last one you can remember watching?
Mine was La La Land.
Watching?
Yeah.
Honestly, the last one was probably Les Mis because I watched it so many times.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched
that was
it
what,
just
2 years ago?
repetitively.
It came out.
Did you see it like on stage, or did you see it as the movie?
I've seen it everywhere.
With
my favorite thing though was when I went to London, and I saw what's it called? The one that's like popular. I wanna be Wicked. I went to London, and
yeah.
when they sing, they try and have American accents, and it's hilarious.
the Londons try to have an American accent.
Yes, because it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's
more
a
of
funny thing,
American.
and something we
I'm
should
pretty
talk
sure
more
anyway.
about at some point is like, American accents specifically. Like it,
But yeah, they try and have American accents.
like
It's
we
entertaining.
grew up with American accents, and we don't think about it as difficult. Like
Right.
a British accent is difficult.
For us.
Yeah,
For us,
unless you're
Right.
British, and
Right,
then
yeah.
thinking about them trying to do an American accent, you don't think it's difficult until you hear someone do it terribly, and then you're like,
Oh. And it wasn't bad.
why
Like
is
it
that
was like us trying to be British. I mean, it was
right,
fine, but
yeah.
yeah.
it was.
They all
great.
sound like they're from Alabama or something. They're like, oh yeah, that's America right there from Alabama. It's like where you and I come from, on the west coast. It's clear, succinct. We can understand every syllable that's said. But
Yeah.
you go over to like New England, it's just like, what did you just say?
Yeah, say it one more time, slower,
slower.
in a West Coast accent.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand
In a
all
West
those
Coast
words, but I don't think you said what you meant to say.
Yes.
So, so Les Miserables is one of your favorites. It's one of my favorites. And bringing it back to Stoicism, I mean, Les Miserables is like kind of the epitome of a Stoic mentality.
Oh, absolutely.
What is the thing that you love about Les Miserables? Besides the music is pretty.
Honestly, within the music though, there's just so much. The writer of the music made it so passionate and so much. I don't know how to say it. Like it's just a beautiful. The way the music is written is just beautiful, and the way that all of them tie in together. So if you start here at the beginning, then at the end of the musical, you're gonna have some of the same thoughts and the same processes as the beginning of the songs. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
No,
how to
I know.
word that or phrase that. You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying. Yeah, they integrate the same themes at
Yes,
the end of
and it's not like other musicals where they do that. They do it so well that you don't even realize it. That it's
Yeah.
just like it just blends so perfectly.
And with Les Miserables, it's such a tender story anyway,
Right.
because it has all of these different situations that different people can relate to, and it's talking about misery straight up, like all of these like impossible situations. But the music, what I love about Les Miserables is the lyrics match the music so perfectly, that whenever they're singing, it almost doesn't feel like they're singing because it feels like they're expressing what's actually going on inside of them. And that's what a good
Exactly.
musical does.
Right.
And as Stoicism would dictate, like, that's those characters acknowledging those feelings and making them exterior to themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a huge deal.
Absolutely.
And if we want
Yeah.
to talk about beautiful people, Russell Crowe can just exist. He can just be there.
So, on the
Okay,
record,
anyway, so-
Rachel is a Russell Crowe fan.
Kind of in love with him. So.
Yeah, okay.
I
thought,
love Russell Crowe too. I liked him in Gladiator and Master and Commander.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he does a pretty good American
Plays a great
accent,
bad
too.
guy.
actually he does.
Yeah, yeah. I thought Anne Hathaway was great in that movie, even though she was only in it for like a minute or something.
Yeah.
Honestly, she was my least favorite part of that movie.
Really?
But everybody else loved her, so I'll just go along with the crowd. I love her.
Oh,
No, I didn't
No,
love her.
don't do that. Yeah. I mean, you're free to not love a beautiful woman that sings
She was
well and
alright.
acts really well. I mean, that's,
The worst.
that's your prerogative.
The worst person in that movie, though.
The worst character
Cassette.
or actress?
Cassette.
Oh,
This actress.
oh. Was that Dakota Fanning? I don't know. We're
Yeah,
getting into
it
like
was.
movie
Okay,
review
anyway,
stuff.
okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
We're not
man.
movie critics.
So
Anyway, moving on.
yeah, the thesis of Les Miserables ties into what we're talking about tonight, and that's kind of what I was trying to.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they went through these like impossible situations, but still found a way to not just move forward, but it starts off with this one person going through a hard thing, and then someone else comes into his life, and now that he's kind of found a path. There's lightning.
That was
If
cool.
anybody was watching, yeah, he's found a path. Then the story kind of evolves into involving all of France,
Yeah.
and then it turns into this whole ish show where still people are finding a way to drive forward. Not
Yeah.
all of them handle their emotions very well.
Right.
But that's a good study in like,
If they just had the
acknowledging-
Stoics.
Yeah, I mean, stop being so passionate. I love it. Don't stop.
How
Yeah.
dare you? How dare you?
Yeah. So, after we've got, what's our time? We got 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. And any final thoughts on music, stoicism, optimism, pessimism, realism,
Marcus
anything?
Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius.
Epictetus.
Honestly,
Russell Crowe.
everything you guys
Don't start
talked
talking about
about
Russell Crowe.
has been things that have related in my life, have been going on in my life recently. So it's good to hear from another
Well, yeah,
perspective
and
that it's real in other lives
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
And, it's not
that's
me.
really what makes us human is that we all have a common experience. Like I've experienced heartache, you've experienced heartache. I'm sure you've experienced heartache. It's,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and
I've been human,
happiness,
you've been human,
you know,
she's
I
mean,
been
I've
human.
You've been
human
happy, I've been
sometimes,
happy,
but
you've been
yeah.
happy,
Yeah.
I've been angry, you've been angry,
Right.
and they're all very common on what makes us mad, what breaks our hearts,
Right.
what makes
Yeah.
us happy, and that's what's part of being human,
Yeah.
But
and
we
it's-
all also have our own unique experiences, and
Right, yeah.
that's what's awesome about
Yeah,
it.
it is, because then it makes for great stories, and we were really honored to have you on the show.
Absolutely.
And I was glad I got to
Yeah, that was a great song.
be on it. So.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're looking forward to next week, where we'll be talking about something different. Who even knows?
Awesome.
We don't
Yeah,
even know.
We're gonna figure it out.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's the
Probably
minimal
Figure it
effort.
out by next week, okay?
So again,
Yeah.
this was the minimal effort. I'm Bruce, George. We had Rachel. Be well.